started, Chair. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Homes and Safe Community Scrutiny Committee, Wednesday, 8th of March at 6 p.m. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand? Can they please put their hands up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function? If a participant raises their hand via the function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the chair and/or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard or seen when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chair or Democratic Officer know. Okay, so on to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. Do we have any? Oh, apologies. I see Councillor Hennessy has his hand up.
It was just to say Samantha was going to be late, but she's now coming.
Oh, I'm here now. Apologies, Chair.
No problem. Do we have any? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Sorry, Chair. It's not any apologies. It's actually just hoping that you would recognise, as I'm sure you've done so all day today, that today's International Women's Day.
I was going to come on to that.
Thank you, Chair.
I was going to come on to it towards the end of the meeting, but I'll come into it now. And I'll say Happy International Women's Day to everybody. This is a day of celebration of all achievements of women all over the world, of which we have a few, and there are some highly performing women in the council. And I just hope that we reflect on that and congratulate all women for achievements that have been made. Councillor Campbell.
As it is International Women's Day, can I just say that you smash it as chair of Home and Safe Communities on International Women's Day, Millie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so no more apologies?
Yeah, Chair, there is one from Councillor Morgan.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on February 2023. Is everybody happy with those minutes?
Yes, Chair.
I propose we accept them, Chair.
Okay, do we have a seconder to move that? Yep, okay, thank you. Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest, including whipping declarations. Do we have any? I'm assuming that's a no. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 4 is Civil Protection Unit update, and this will be presented by Debbie Spargo. Go ahead, Debbie.
Hello, good evening. Nice to see you all. Sorry, I'm still in the control room at F26 because we've been dealing with the weather today. So we've just about wrapped that up now. So I'm sure if you've got any questions on that, I can try and answer them. So I'm Debbie Spargo, and I'm the Principal Civil Protection Officer for the Vale of Glamorgan Council. I am based at the... Do you want me to put my presentation up? I do apologise. I should have said that in the beginning.
Yes, please, if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, let me get that up for you. Okay, is that showing? Can you... Yeah?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, okay, great. So I am... The Civil Protection Unit is part of the Environment and Housing Service based at the Alps in Wenvo. And we have 2 officers, myself and Carl Culverwell, and then Melanie Hammond, who is the South Wales Local Resilience Forum Coordinator, which is a partnership hosted by the Vale, but sits under my team. So that's the structure and where we're based. Miles Punter is the director. The Civil Contingencies Act places these duties onto the council as a Category 1 responder, along with Blue Lights Services, NRW and the Health Service. So as we have a statutory duty to undertake all of these duties, well, I've said that twice now, under the Act. And that's what we do to ensure the council is ready to respond to an emergency, prepared, and that we, through the South Wales Local Resilience Forum, have our cooperation and sharing through that. This year has been a busy year, since basically March the 23rd, 2020, when we went into lockdown. It seems to have been quite relentless. We've gone from one thing to another without any break. So this year in particular, we've dealt with humanitarian response. That we do deal with humanitarian response anyway, in terms of providing rest centres, which are temporary shelter if anybody is evacuated or needs any kind of shelter. And this year, the UK government, we were part of the initial setting up of welcome centres and arrival centres when the war broke out in Ukraine. So we had a little part to play in that, and the civil contingencies profession across Wales came together to look at supporting that. The COVID-19 inquiry, which you might be aware, has just started, under Baroness Hallett has already, we've given quite a bit of evidence to that as a local authority. Part 1 of that concentrated on our preparedness. So from my perspective, it was quite key to make sure that we were involved in helping to the Chief Executive put the response back to that. And that inquiry is just starting, so it's probably going to be a number of years with that. It's going to be ongoing. I think the next part is looking more at the health service and social services, and it's quite intense about what kinds of questions they're asking, quite rightly, to make sure that we had the right response and we learn any lessons. So I chair the building security group for the council. And this year that's been quite challenging, in that we've had quite a lot of different incidents across the authority with members of the public, maybe feeling a bit aggrieved or feeling that the services aren't there that could be there or they want to be there. And we've had to increase building security in a number of our buildings, and also looking at staff safety. So that's an ongoing project that I'm working on at the moment. And that links in then to Martin's Law. So Martin's Law is come out of the Manchester Arena attack. That is imminently going to become law. It's in the process of going into Parliament, and that places a number of duties on the local authority. So we will have to be part of a protective security group that we will have to chair, working with our partners. And we've already got the structure set up. And the framework set up. So we will be moving forward with that. And as we go forward, I can bring further reports then as we move forward with that and what we're doing to meet that duty. It is really new, and it's quite wide ranging. It's looking at quite a lot of event organisers, event venues, different sizes, anywhere where there's crowded places. So it's about the organisers of events ensuring that they have protective security in place. And things for us like planning, licensing. So for us, it's quite wide ranging in terms of the authority. So there's a cross-authority group being set up for that, which I'm going to be chairing. And I do then link into the contest board, which is the Cardiff and the Vale contest board. So myself and Debbie Gibbs from Community Safety both sit on that for the council. Other things that we've done this year, in terms of, we have an emergency planning framework review. So we've managed to review these plans this year. So all of these, I'm not going to read them out because I'm sure you can read them all. If you are confused with any of the acronyms, please ask me, because I do talk quite a bit in acronyms. So and knowing to me, because I know what they are. So if you want to know anything, please ask. But we have produced or looked at a lot of our framework this year and what we're doing, and going forward next year we'll be looking at business continuity and a few other key things that we need to pick up after COVID. The incidents that we've dealt with this year, again, probably things that maybe people have forgotten about. So the continued COVID-19 response, even though most people think COVID is gone, it's not. So from our perspective, we've still had sort of a wide-ranging response across South Wales, working with the health service. We've had a number of travellers within the Vale of Glamorgan this year, and we have a quite good process in place to help us to manage that and to make sure that we're meeting our duties for that. Storm Dudley and Storm Eunice seems a long time ago now, February 22, but that's when they happened. And then from one extreme to the other, the extreme heat wave, which we don't often see, but again, there is an emergency response around that because of the actual extreme heat can actually cause more problems than actually cold weather. We've had the industrial action, we're still working on that. Fuel shortages, which were caused by supply issues through Brexit mainly, that we've had to deal with. Welsh water incidents in Penarth, and avian flu, which just seems to have gone on forever and be an ongoing event now rather than actually emergency. And if you've noticed a shortage of eggs in the shops, it's directly related to that. I could add to that now today, the snow response of March 2008, of March the 8th, 2023, because obviously that's today. And then going forward into next year, the COVID-19 inquiry is going to take up quite a bit of our time. I mentioned the Protective Security Preparedness Group, which is linked directly to Martin's Law. Cardiff and the Vale Contest Board, which is the counter-terrorism strand out of the national government and is looked at Contest Cymru across Wales, and the Events Safety Advisory Group, which again I chair for the council. So we make sure that all events, safety guidance is given out and events are run safely in the Vale then. That's a really quick whistle-stop tour through that. It's quite really quick, to be honest. If anybody's got any questions, I'd be more than happy, if I can answer them, to answer them. So Chair, should I take the questions, or did you want to? Because I can see, is it
Councillor I can see Councillor Perks has her hand up. It took me a while to get off mute. I do apologise that it wouldn't work. But yes, Councillor Perks, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered how many sort of events you sort of advise on within a year.
Oh, that's quite. We have I couldn't put an actual figure on it because it's not something that I've ever thought about counting. We have sort of the big events in the Vale, so the Vale Show, Barry. What's it called? Glastonbury,
yes.
Cadstock. So all the big events in the Vale, which have to come through the events panel, and then we do have quite a number of smaller events that are brought to us by smaller organisers that might be from maybe Llanthwaite Major or Cowbridge area. Penarth Town Council are quite sort of good at putting events on, and they all come in through that. I could get you a figure, but I wouldn't like to guesstimate, to be honest with you, because it's not something I've ever looked at. And I know that in COVID, obviously there was very little went on. And then since COVID, there's been quite a lot. So we used to have the events panel every 2 months, and now we have it every month. So we normally have things to discuss every month. So I can get you some figures, Councillor, and I can send them over to you if that'd be helpful.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Hi, Debbie.
Hello.
So I've noticed going through the presentation that you haven't mentioned anything about the Ukrainian crisis and about anybody coming over from the Ukraine. Is that kind of not your area, or would that be dealt with by somebody else?
So the Ukraine scheme, I touched upon it very briefly on the first slide under humanitarian. So the humanitarian part of that we were involved in, the civil contingencies, was around the setting up of welcome centres. There was no welcome centres in the Vale. These were national centres that were brought in under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. I think the one that we know about more in Wales is the one that was at Llangrannog in Carmarthenshire. So and then we had an arrivals hub at Cardiff Airport, but they were nationally run schemes. So we helped to set those up, but it's not my it's more to do with housing and homelessness than it is to do with myself in terms of running those schemes. But we have been involved in that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deb. I was just going to say, partially in response to Sandra's question, I worked with Debbie a long time ago on what was major environmental incidents with the recycling fires at Landau and that. And Debbie, the setup that you had even back then was awesome. And I'd like to tell all the other council how good your civil contingency planning was. My question was with the contest, the counter-terrorism stuff. Could you just expand a little bit on that? Is it to do with the prevent strategy?
Yeah, so there's 4 strands to contest. So prevent, protect, pursue. I can't remember them because they're police-led. The 2 of them are police-led, and so prevent and protect are normally what we look at. So there is a prevent strategy that comes under Safer Vale. And what we've done with the new Martin's Law, so with the new protective security group, is we've linked it up with Safer Vale. So we've put a new governance structure in place around it, and then that feeds straight into Contest Cymru. So there's a Cardiff and the Vale Contest Board, which is chaired by a director in Cardiff Council. It's a joint board that we sit on, and then that links into Contest Cymru, which is chaired by it was ACC Andy Valentine, it's now ACC Wendy Gunnell. So it's a whole strategy that looks at the whole of Wales, and then things are fed down through that.
Thank you very much, and good to see you again.
Thank you, and thank you for your kind words. That's very nice of you.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. It's just a question in relation to the community sandbag protocol. I was just wondering, in terms of community provision for it, often the instruction is to go to the Alps depot or Court Road or elsewhere to collect sandbags. Occasionally that can be problematic for residents. It's happened in my own ward, and I'm sure it's happened elsewhere. If you have periods of heavy rainfall and there are floods, often it's not possible for people to get to the collection points to actually obtain the sandbags. So it was just a question really, because in Lamdock they've done it occasionally where the community council have stored some within the village and then they've been made available. I was just wondering if there is a formal process that identifies flood risk areas to ensure that perhaps either community councils can provide them or the council could send a suitable vehicle out that's able to get through the floods or through areas in difficult weather conditions to ensure that a collection point that's accessible can be provided, because I know it's difficult to do that across the board. Obviously, what may flood in one incident of bad weather may be completely fine again. But if we could identify areas that are known as to be at risk, then obviously it will help ensure that provision is available in future emergencies.
Yeah, so I know that the lead local we are the lead local flood authority, and Clive's Moon's team tend to be the ones who do the flood plans and look at that. So there is that kind of across the Vale. There will be a a flood plan, or I wouldn't want to call it a flood plan. It will be a risk assessment of where it's likely to flood. In the Vale, it's quite difficult because we haven't got many main rivers in terms of the type of main rivers that the NRW would, the Natural Resources Wales would normally have warnings on. So we tend to get more flash flooding, and we never know, unfortunately, where that's going to happen. We know that there are hot spots. So that I've been in this job for 30 years, so I can tell you going back to 1998 where the flooding's been, and it might not be there for another 10 years, but then it might come back there. So I know previously when we talked about this, I think the director contacted the community councils to ask them about if they wanted to store sandbags. I think the whole issue of sandbags is quite problematical because it's something that the actual management of them, in terms of for community councils and community councillors to hold those and give them out on the right amount and where they're going to be going. So I think I can take it back and discuss it with Miles. But in terms of we buy our sandbags in now, and I'm not sure how long they're going to be left to be. They are going to be supplied for. We don't have a duty and a statutory duty to give sandbags out as a council. So it is about trying to work with homeowners and local councillors about community resilience. And it's about working, to where these sandbags could be held that is central, like you say. I mean, in December 2020, where we had flooding in Dinas Powys, we couldn't have got any sandbags there unless we'd had a helicopter, to be honest with you, because the infrastructure of the Vale was so badly affected by that flooding. I mean, I live in Antwerp Major, and it took me 2.5 hours to get into the Alps to open the flood room. So on that situation, it was really difficult because you were saying to people, well, the sandbags are at the Court Road, but actually people couldn't get them. So I do think it is about working with local community councils and town councils to build community resilience within the council. And I know that the NRW through the National Flood Forum have worked on a community flood plan for Dinas Powys now. So I'm not sure if that answers your question fully, Councillor Carroll, but
yeah, it basically does, to be honest with you, Debbie. I mean, I appreciate that it's very difficult for community and town councils to take on this responsibility anyway. So I wasn't suggesting that it should be sort of a standard process, because I think they're perishable as well, sandbags, aren't they? So it's sort of, so they can't just keep them indefinitely, even if they had the space, capacity and desire to. But I think the other thing would be if the council were to have means with a heavier vehicle, at least if then in the moment it was reported that an area was inaccessible, if the council perhaps had means that the average resident wouldn't have to get the sandbags into the community, if that could be something that's looked at, that would be helpful, because I know it's happened in my ward before where residents have been unable to get to Court Road or the Alps to collect sandbags, and then there's sort of been a big panic on. If sometimes when emergencies happen, there isn't much you can do about it and you have to accept it. But I think that if residents see that there has been long-term planning and that's visible, and that big efforts have been made to try and put that in place, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. I'll find out about that. I'll come back to you on that then.
Councillor Hanks. Thank you, Chair. Evening, Debbie. Thank you for your presentation. They're always really informative and I enjoy them. And I was just going to ask a quick question about the snow situation. Are you expecting snow in the next 24 hours for the Vale?
Well, I hope not. That's my answer, Sally. So we didn't expect the snow we had in the early hours of this morning, to be honest with you, because the forecast that we were given was it was going to rain and it wasn't going to snow until 5 o'clock in the Vale. So when I got up this morning at 2 o'clock and looked out the window because I'm on call, I was like, oh dear. We have had a response today from it. We've there's there's been some double gritting done. There's gritting going on now at 6 o'clock, and we're gritting at 10 o'clock as well tonight. We're not expecting temperatures to drop to freezing, which is good, because what's there now would then freeze. So that's probably more hazardous than the snow. And from the information that we've had, we haven't seen any more snow on the radar at the moment. But however, I can't say that with full certainty that it won't happen. But we have supported social services as well today with residential care, and we've got that in place overnight on call, and we've got on-call officers ready in the morning to get into action if anything happens.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, I can see you have your hand up. However, Councillor Buckley is on the committee, so I'll ask him to come first.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry, Mark, for pushing in. It was just when on the sandbags. I know you said it's normally flash flooding in the Vale, but it's normally preceded with severe weather warnings. Can people go to the Alps the day before the floods, before Storm Dudley and stuff? Could they go up then? Because ideally you want the sandbags done before the water comes, not after the water comes, because you're just stopping it, leaving your property then. Do we have provision for that then?
Well, what we normally do is that when we receive any kind of weather warning, we have access to a system called Hazard Manager, which is run by the Met Office, and also we have our own some of our own in systems that highways have pay into, particularly around the freezing of the roads and the snow. What we tend to do is we have a meeting, so we'll assess that weather warning. We can contact we have a Met Office Civil Contingency Advisor, so we can contact, and they can be quite good with helping us in terms of looking at what's going to happen, and then based on that we can make a decision on if we open the sandbag provision, what time we open it. We did open it. I think it was in January we opened it as a precaution, not so much because we'd had a yellow flood warning, because we wouldn't normally, a yellow warning for weather, we wouldn't normally open it for that. But because we'd had 3 weeks, I don't know if you remember, over Christmas, it just seemed to rain and rain and rain. And because we'd had 3 preceding weeks of rain, and we felt that it could be at a tipping point in terms of the Vale and the way that the sort of streams and rivers respond, we decided to open that as a precaution. So we opened that, I think it was for a 24-hour period. It was from 6 at night till I think 12 o'clock, and then from in the morning we opened it as well. And we had, I think we gave out about, I want to say sort of 90 sandbags. So that would have been sort of 9 residents came to get those sandbags. But we do try and do that, Councillor, as far ahead as we can in terms of opening the provision.
Oh, good. It gives people a chance before the roads are shut to get up and get them. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, before I bring Councillor Wilson in, is there any other member of the committee who would like to speak? Okay, a committee happy for me to bring Councillor Wilson in?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. So one of my other responsibilities, and as you know, my portfolio is quite wide ranging, is flooding. And it is an issue. And I've had a good meeting with Debbie over these sort of issues. And I certainly was one of those people that was pushing when we had that consistent rain. I would say consistent in January, because I was very much aware of the rising water levels. The groundwater levels are very high. And of course, then after that, we then had a freeze, didn't we? And I know Councillor Carroll knows all too well about that, because we had some bit of an issue, to be honest, in Landock and in the Hill and also Penarth Road, and we had black ice then, didn't we? And some of that was caused by the rising water levels. And clearly, I know today that some of you may be a bit behind in terms of wasting and green waste collections, because some of those people are being diverted to do gritting this morning and this afternoon, because obviously, as you're well aware, the temperatures have dropped a bit, to be honest, and this is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid people, we know that what can happen after rain and snow in particular is it turns into ice, and what we're trying to avoid as much as we can. So that's one issue. The other issue I was going to talk to you about was sandbags. What I will say is that and Councillor Carroll is correct. The problem with sandbags, they don't last forever. Lots of people have sandbags for too long a period of time and they do deteriorate, and they're not much good in that case. And really, there are other alternatives that people can purchase, normally made of silico, which could be used, which are more effective. What I also would urge residents, and also as members, you can members, is what the Cub Scouts are, and I'm sure most of you were Cubs or Scouts or Girl Guides or Brownies, whatever, is that it's always be prepared. And I would say be prepared, because we all know we're going through some degree of climate change. We've had some weird weather. You know that February was one of the driest Februaries we ever had in the UK. We had very wet January. March is interesting at the moment. Be prepared. Clearly, be prepared with those provisions beforehand. I would also say it's not a great deal of sense to try and get to, I think it's the site is by the dock office, to get those bags when you've got very inclement weather, and also you're making things worse for yourself, or you're risking a flooded engine to get there. If you live in a flood zone area, or if you're near a river, I would argue be prepared, and obviously we can help you as a council to assist in that, along with NRW. As Debbie rightly says, we haven't got a major river. I suppose the only real issue we had in January was that we did have a bit of an issue in Peterston Super Ely with the river there, but that's largely an NRW responsibility because that's the River Ely. An awful lot of the rivers that we have are relatively minor. They're almost like brooks, to be honest. We have the River Caddiston. I know that caused the issue in Dennis, along with the issue on the Woods. So, there are issues, but I would say, I'm going to repeat this, be prepared and look for other alternatives other than sandbags, because there are better ones out there, and you can get them from DIY places as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And just to add to that, we have put onto the website the community, the plan for to advise communities and to help them develop plans, and that they're not just around flooding, they're for heat. It includes heat wave and power outages and things like that. So to promote that into our communities, to help our communities be more resilient, and to be I think that's what we want to work towards, being a really resilient community. And we have got those in the Vale where we can come together and sort of solve some of these things. So we're happy to help if we can on anything like that. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
And thank you, Debbie, for your answer.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any further questions? Okay, well, in that case then, I will say thank you very much to Debbie. You are free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Our committee happy to note the presentation.
Happy to note, Chair.
Okay,
happy to second that.
Yeah. All right then. Well, thank you very much, Debbie. Okay, you can stick around if you like, or you can leave. It's up to you.
I'm still in the control room, so I've got a few things to finish off before I go home. So thank you very much.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Okay. So agenda item 5 then we shall go on to, and that is the revenue monitoring for period 1st of April to 31st of January. 1st of April 22 to 31st of January 23. Gemma, if you'd like to come in.
Hi, good evening, Chair. Thank you very much for having me. So just to take us through the revenue monitoring, I'll just go through it quite a high level because I'm very conscious you had the November monitoring to last committee. So in terms of the key themes around across the council, and we've heard about these throughout the year. So we have the particular pressure around inflationary pressures, and that's most notably around the additional pay award that was budgeted in year, and that's been offset in most areas by vacant posts. And we also have the ongoing impact of COVID and the cost of living crisis on services. So I don't think there are any significant changes in terms of monitoring for the services that are relevant to this scrutiny committee. So in terms of council fund housing, we're reporting pressures associated with the additional pay award and also regarding Caddiston house rental income. And we also have potentially emerging pressure in respect of hotel accommodation for homeless clients, although we expect that to largely hit future financial years. At the moment, we're proposing that the unbudgeted pay award of around 43,000, and it says potential, but it's not potential because it has been agreed, will be offset by an underspend within the council fund housing budget. In terms of public sector housing, we're expecting to outturn on target. The main variation will be around where we've had slippage in the capital programme, and therefore we're having a smaller drawdown on the housing revenue account reserves. In terms of private housing, we are generating less income than we've budgeted, and this is partly due to some of the contractors leaving the framework and also staff turnover during the year. We've now engaged a new contractor, and so we'll be in a position to fast track the backlog of works. And they're also having pressure around the pay award in 22-23 in this service area. We have an underspend in the youth offending service, which is made up due to vacant staff posts and also some additional grant income from the Youth Justice Board. And we're currently projecting a small overspend on the shared regulatory services budget, and that's due to an overspend in the licensing area of the shared regulatory service budget. But the call on that will be from the regulatory service reserve. In terms of reserves, the use of reserves has reduced slightly for this financial year, and that's partly due to slippage on the capital programme. The reserves analysis that's included in the report also reflects the reallocation of reserves that's taken place as part of the preparation for the 23-24 revenue budget. And in terms of treasury management, we are continuing to utilise reserves over any external borrowing on a temporary basis, given the high interest rates for borrowing. And we also have additional underspending year off the back of investment income, and that's being used to offset pressures within the revenue budget in year. So those are the main points that I was going to draw out, but I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Gemma. It's just in relation to Cadoxton House, and I know that this has been referenced in other reports, and I don't know if you or Mike would be able to come in with an update, because I understand that options are now being considered, because the reality is Cadoxton House only now has one tenant, and it would be useful, I think, perhaps if you can, where possible, share with the committee what considerations are being taken into consideration. I think the nature of the internal sort of outlay or of the building itself, and the impact that may have on potential new tenants.
If I just come up with an initial response, and then if Mike wants to come in, then he can do. So I've certainly had discussions around the potential future use of Cadoxton House as part of the council's asset group. So obviously we've got a number of assets across the council that we need to kind of review the potential uses for, and that is one that's being looked at by property and some of my project management colleagues as well. So I've had discussions as part of that group. It certainly is an asset that, you know, we've talked about for a number of years, and I think given the fact that there's only one tenant now, we do need to come up with a strategy going forward. But I haven't got any firm proposals that I would be able to share, but I can see Mike's turned his camera on, so he might be able to add some additional information.
Yeah, yes, Mike, if you want to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the history of Cadoxton House initially was identified as a community-based resource for a number of community-based issues, whether they be issues around domestic violence, drug and alcohol issues, and was seen as a multi-agency base to include the police and other agencies, including social services. Clearly, over the last 4 or 5 years, agencies have reconfigured the way that they deliver services as a result of a number of pressures, I guess, on those individual services. You know, whether they are dispersed services or whether they are centralised services, and most organisations go through that process, I guess, over a period of time. We are in a situation at the moment, as you quite rightly say, where we have one service that remains in the building. There is effectively a cost burden which is currently falling on the community safety budget to fund that cost burden. We have, over, as Gemma has mentioned, it's been on our horizon for the last couple of years, and under the asset management reviews that we've been looking at. In terms of the building itself, the building is not particularly well set out and laid out within. If anyone has been in there, it is difficult to remodel the interior of the building for alternative office space, although colleagues have looked at that as a potential option in terms of marketing the building as an alternative office type sort of base. Members may also be aware that the original refurbishment and design of the building was assisted through the aid of Welsh Government grant in the form of 2 grants. In speaking to Welsh Government, both of those grant streams also had clawback provision applied to them. So should the council wish to dispose of that building, there may well be a requirement in order to refund Welsh Government elements of the grant, the original grant. We are exploring alternatives, and as you will see in a later report this evening, in terms of looking at our ADP actions for 23-24, there is an action within the document which talks around an options appraisal and reviewing the future use. And officers, as Gemma has mentioned, will continue to review the position for review the position for Cadoxton House to ensure clearly that that cost burden to us is addressed one way or the other. I think as it would be fair to say that in terms of council buildings and council offices, we're going through our own processes, as members will be aware, in terms of our future buildings and use of the buildings, given the change in the way that organisations work post-pandemic. And obviously Cadoxton House will be in consideration of that. There is no current demand for in-house services for the future use of that building. However, as I say, we'll go through the full options appraisal, and a decision will be arrived at in terms of whether the building is surplus, and if so, what is the best method in relation to the reuse and or disposal of the building going forward.
Thank you, Mike.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and apologies, Gemma, for sort of bouncing this question onto you rather than into the next report.
Oh, no problem. It is referenced in the report. Happy to take the question.
Councillor Perks. Thank you, Chair. And this might be in the next report as well, but I'll ask the question. I just wondered, with the liquidation of Jehu and their company, if we'd lost money on any of the developments that we had that they were in the middle of, or whether we're covered by insurances and stuff like that.
We haven't lost any money as such, but it's going to potentially cost us more to complete the development, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just as an update in terms of the development at Hayes Road in Surrey, the council have now engaged a management consultancy to take on the effectively the day-to-day delivery of the council accommodation on the site. We went through a tender process a few weeks ago now, and that consultancy is now in place and is now arranging all of the subcontractors to deliver the homes. We are entering into insurance provision because the council is now responsible directly for the delivery of the site. So we are entering into contractual arrangements now, again with subcontracting companies, arranging insurances, and the whole caboodle, I suppose, in terms of what it means to actually build your own housing, rather than we have done in the past, obviously, to tender that process out. It has taken up quite a lot of resource and time for my staff, obviously in dealing with those day-to-day issues. I think on a positive note, we continue to engage with the subcontractors that were already on site as soon as we were aware that Jehu, unfortunately, we're going into administration. We've retained these subcontractors, which in the main were all local subcontractors. And as a result of which, in terms of loss, we've not necessarily lost anything, nor necessarily have they, by the council taking on responsibility for the development going forward. Immediate actions that were undertaken, members may be aware, if they'd seen the site, a number of properties were half finished and that the timber frames were erected, and some had roofs and some didn't. We weatherproofed. We were required, obviously, to weatherproof and safeguard the investment that had already been made. Otherwise, the timber would have been no use, and other than firewood. And we've obviously done that work, as I say, just to safeguard our position. We will see contractors on site very, very, very shortly. And whilst I don't at this stage have a completion date, because we'll be working with our management contractors, obviously, to revise and work out a new development plan for the site. It's pleasing to say that we will get those much needed council homes, 53 council homes, I think it is, in the development. And we're still working on the basis of the potential to phased handover of the site. So, we'll have people people in those much needed homes sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that explanation. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Hi, Gemma. Can you just clarify the situation in regards to the homeless clients staying in the hotel provisions and the Welsh Government funding around this? I was under the impression that we had the Welsh Government funding to cover the COVID timescale, but where are we at with the funding now?
We've had some additional funding, some forward funding for next financial year allocated to us. It's not, on the scale of the previous funding, and we've also allocated some additional, albeit reduced funding as part of the 23-24 revenue budget via a cost pressure. And then we've, as part of the kind of longer term strategy for the budget, then we've kind of profiled the Welsh Government funding falling away, and some kind of step in of funding to allow for time for us to bring in some additional provision as part of the kind of the rapid rehousing housing strategy that Mike and his team have been developing. So I think there is additional funding from Welsh Government for next year, absolutely, but I think it's just managing the kind of complexities around the numbers of people. So there is an ongoing potential pressure in that area that we need to keep under review as we go into next financial year.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike, if you'd like to come back in.
Perhaps I could just add to the expand a little bit on the conversation. I think we received somewhere in the region for this year and for next year, somewhere in the region of £1.3 million, I think it was, in totality, for a range of measures to respond to transitional and preventative arrangements. Part of that clearly is going to be used for the hotel provision. Elements of that will fund some preventative work. It will allow us to increase our ability perhaps to save tenancies and save evictions through things like paying for or contributing to some of the costs perhaps associated to rent arrears to prevent eviction, potentially to look at expanding the use of discretionary housing payments, and a range of other mitigations that we would obviously want to put in place, because the costs of not doing that are greater on the budget of somebody becoming homeless and going into temporary accommodation, and the costs not only to the council but the costs also to those families and individuals who find themselves in that precarious position. In terms of the future position, yes, it was put forward clearly as a cost pressure because we've not recovered from the no one left out approach that was adopted during COVID. The hotel provision is such that we're still routinely having 80 or 90 individuals within bed and breakfast. We don't want to rehouse, and I'm sure members don't want people housed for long periods of time in bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast is an emergency provision, and it is not really suitable for longer term. The problem that we have is move on, and moving people from temporary accommodation into more permanent housing, and hence, you know, I guess my and our wish as a council to provide more council housing to meet those demands. But clearly there is going to be a period of catch up because it takes, as we've discussed with the previous question regarding delivery of new housing, there is clearly a lead-in time to actually deliver that housing for those homes to be occupied. We're closely monitoring the situation. We are developing a rapid rehousing plan, which will shortly be going to Cabinet, which I'm sure Cabinet will refer to Scrutiny Committee for consideration in due course. And you can see some of the additional measures that we're looking to try and address some of those longer term issues around homelessness, and particularly the length of time that people are currently spending in our temporary accommodation.
Councillor Hennessy.
Hi, I'm Mike. Can you tell us where we are on the Eagleswell site at the moment, please?
I can advise that we are, in terms of the development, we are about to enter into contract to procure the units. We previously had a letter of intent, which has allowed us through our contractor to undertake preliminary works on site and surveys. That as soon as we're in contract, the accommodation itself will be ordered. I'm told it takes about, from order to delivery, around 12 weeks. But obviously there's an awful lot of work to do on site in order to make the site suitable for those units then to be transported and obviously delivered to site, and that work will be commencing very, very shortly.
Thank you, Mike.
Mark, it looks like Councillor, the chair has frozen. His screen's frozen.
Yeah, I can see now, Vice Chair. I'll try and see, hopefully if the chair, if you can hear us, Chair, can you come out and rejoin? Bear with me, I'll just message her now.
Mike, would you sort of humour me, and can you confirm that am I right in saying that the rapid rehousing officer has now been appointed?
We have appointed a rapid rehousing coordinator. Part of the rapid rehousing proposals, following the guidance from Welsh Government, and I'm, you know, I'm sure I'm talking and preaching perhaps a little to the converted. everyone on the call will realise that homelessness is not just a housing problem, it's a corporate, multifaceted issue, which no one organisation can solve on their own. And as a result of which, the appointment of a rapid rehousing coordinator will, as far as delivering that plan, will work multi-agency, cross-department, cross-council, to ensure that the priority that we place on homelessness is also mirrored in those organisations as well, because together we will achieve much more than in part. So yes, you've put me on the spot now.
Sorry.
We've appointed Mark, and I can't remember his surname. Mark. The gentleman was previously employed by Shelter Cymru, so is well versed and well experienced in the whole area of homelessness, and is well aware of all the issues that our clients face and the organisational issues and difficulties that we face as organisations. So an excellent appointment. We're very pleased to have Mark on board. And when I remember his surname, I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you, Mike.
The chair's rejoined now, Vice Chair, just to let you know.
You.
Hi, apologies for that. My internet went down temporarily. I could still hear you guys and I could still see you guys, but don't think you could hear or see me. But yeah, I've reconnected. I'm fine now. Okay, so are we on agenda item 6 now, are we?
We are, Chair, and Councillor Avietta's got a hand up, I think. Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, Chair, just to let you know, we're still on the revenue monitoring report.
Oh, we're still on agenda item 5.
Item 5, yeah.
Okay,
Councillor
no problem.
Aviette had her hand up.
I can see that. I'll bring her in now. Thank you for catching me up. Come on in, Councillor Aviette.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is the right time to bring this in, but it's about Pobble. Should I ask you about it another time, or can I bring it up now for Mike?
Mike, is this on this? Is it an appropriate question? Is for now?
Is it? I'm quite happy to answer any questions on Pobble or anything to do with housing per se, but
right. Just yeah, thank you. I was in there the other day. There's somebody begging outside there, and as you know, before I've sent people from housing have been down before and checked on these people, and they usually get taken back to Cardiff. But when I went into Pobble the other day, now I was under the understanding it's a one-stop shop. I know we haven't got anywhere, but I was told, well, if he came in here, this person, and I don't think he's homeless in Vale anyway, because they get picked up. But if he came in, or if somebody brought him in, whatever, we wouldn't be. There's nowhere to put him, and it's not our problem. And I said, and one of the other people came over from Pobble while I was at the desk, and they said, well, we think it's organised, and and I said, yeah, I think that as well. I said, have you referred him to the police? And he said, yeah, but then nobody's doing anything about it. But if we got anybody on the street, and it's called a one-stop shop, why can't we send them there? But I was told, no, they have to go through the Civic first and then go there. Can you just put me right? Because I don't want to be sending people to Pobble when it's not, they've got to be referred anyway from Civic.
So in answer to your question, Pobble obviously provide advice and guidance services and general advice in relation to homelessness and support. If somebody is immediately homeless, then they're quite right. They should be referred immediately to the Housing Solutions team at the council offices, who would have the statutory responsibility to address that immediate need. Pobble wouldn't have accommodation. They don't have a hostel in the Vale. And clearly the duty and the responsibility in determining and decision making rests with the council. So if an individual turns up at Pobble's offices and they are homeless, then they will be referred clearly to the council's homelessness team then to address the immediate housing issue.
Okay, thank you. It's just I need to be more clear on what Pobble actually do now. You know, I mean, if somebody's like in debt with their rent and that, all that kind of thing, they can go there for, or they needing to move, or they want an exchange, they can do all that. Okay.
Yeah, Pobble are commissioned to provide housing related support. They're not commissioned to directly provide accommodation. So
okay,
yes, so somebody that has a rent arrears issue, they have an issue with their landlord, they may be under notice, a whole range of housing support based issues. But if somebody were to attend and say, look, I've got nowhere to sleep tonight, they would automatically be signposted back to the Civic for the Civic to provide the necessary resources and accommodation if we have the duty to do so.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, do we have anybody else who would like to ask a question on agenda item 5? Okay, so the recommendations for this are that we regard the position to the authority's 2022-23 revenue budget and be noted. Are we happy with that?
Happy to note,
yes, Chair.
Yes,
okay.
Chair.
And the second recommendation is that members note the arrangements to offset the projected overspend in 2022 to 23 as set out in the report. Are we happy with that?
Happy, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so agenda item 6 then is the capital monitoring, and that is for the period 1st of April 22 to 31st January 23. If you'd like to come in on that now, Gemma.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Chair. So in terms of capital, as you've been hearing all year from us, it's an extremely challenging environment to deliver capital schemes. We've got significant inflationary pressures, a real shortage of skilled staff, and a significant lead time on materials. And we also have particular challenges regarding the delivery of housing schemes in terms of some of the issues that we've been talking about around of contractors in the sector. So all of these factors are bringing increased complexity to schemes, and that's also leading to some delay on the delivery of schemes as well. So I think the main element of this report that's relevant to the Scrutiny Committee is the reprofiling of the Housing Improvement Programme that's reflected in the 22-23 Capital Programme. So that's outlined. There's a table just below paragraph 2.3, no, 2.30, 2.30 of this report. And that's outlining some slippage across a variety of schemes within the programme that totals 3.272 million. And the amended housing capital programme will total just over 21 million for 22-23. Whilst this slippage does reflect the likely profile of delivery of schemes, I think the service are working hard to identify opportunities to accelerate expenditure against the housing improvement programme, and we need to continue to keep that under review. So that was the main element of the report that I was going to pick up this evening, but happy to take any questions on the report. I note that we obviously have answered some questions as part of the previous report as well in relation to capital.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Seems we have some tumbleweeds today. Okay, no problem. Okay, so if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go to the recommendations. There are 4. The recommendation that the progress made on delivering the 2022 to 23 capital programme within the remit of committee be noted. That the second is that the use of delegated authority within the remit of the committee, as set out on the report, is noted. The third is that the use of emergency powers is noted, and the fourth that the changes to the 2022 to 23 and future years capital programme within the remit of the committee, as set out in the report, is noted. Are committee happy to go with the 4 recommendations?
Happy to note.
Yes,
Okay.
Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. In that case, then, I will thank Gemma for her time this evening. As always, you are welcome to stick around, or you may go home if you want to.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we are now on agenda item 7, which is the service level activities and performance targets to deliver the Vale of Glamorgan Council's annual delivery plan 2022 to 24. Mike, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. The report before you represents our planned service activities for 2023-24 associated with delivery of the Council's annual delivery plan. Helpfully, as you can see from the 2 appendices attached to the report, we've drawn out the relevant service plan actions and associated objectives for this committee's perusal, rather than the entire ADP actions, and expect members to look through those, identifying the ones that are relevant. As members will be aware, in line with our statutory duties, we review the relevance of our wellbeing objectives, and as a result, going into the next financial year, as you can see outlined in the annual delivery plan, we identify relevant improvement outcomes for Vale citizens, and also how they contribute to our national wellbeing goals. Scrutiny Committee considered a draft ADP in December. Views were taken into account and was endorsed then by Cabinet on the 16th of February, and was referred on to full council on the 6th of March. The commitments for the ADP are reflected in our 15 service plans across the council, and as you can see within the body of the report, those 15 plans can be looked at obviously in more detail should you wish to do so. But as you can see outlined in Appendix A and Appendix B are the relevant actions and performance measures that we're putting forward for consideration for the 23-24 ADP delivery plan. Members are asked to review and endorse recommendations to Cabinet for planned service activities in Appendix A, and members are furthermore asked to review and endorse recommendations, the proposed measures and service performance targets in Appendix B. I don't intend to go into any particular detail in terms of the document in front of you. As you can see, there's a considerable number of actions from the various service plans and actions that may fall and do fall under the remit of Homes and Safe Communities Committee. Safe to say there's an indication in the report that the service plan priorities for SRS are yet to be agreed as a result of the processes and governance arrangements in place, as SRS is obviously a tri-council service, but will be referred back to committee in due course. If I leave it there, and obviously if there are any questions in relation to the priorities and actions, I'll be happy to address those that I can deal with and fall within my remit. If there are questions specifically relating to SRS or colleagues in social care, clearly I may need to take those issues back and come back to committee with an update, as officers are not in attendance at the meeting this evening.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Buckley, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike. Just one question. A number of the ADPs have got no action against them. Is that because you're waiting for stuff to be set through SRS, or is it because we're continuing business as normal or firefighting as opposed to having a plan for those headings?
Yeah, what that identifies, Councillor Buckley, is that none of our actions fall within the overall aim in that heading. So if, for example, you look at Appendix A, ADP 24 as an example, the ADP action says taking a place-making approach to regen, maximising the use of external funding, transforming towns, UK government shared prosperity funding. In terms of the activities of the directorates under the remit, there are no aligned actions in our service plans to achieve that, but there will be actions in other directorates. So other committees will be considering those issues under their remit. It's just that they're not under the Homes and Safe remit in this case.
Thank you very much. Excuse me.
Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thank you, and thank you, Mike. Can I just refer you to ADP 10 and in particular I was wondering if you would be kind enough to explain just some of the work that's recently been taking place across a number of agencies in relation to the antisocial behaviour that's been much I suppose shared on social media, so we can get some facts and sort out the fiction from the council's perspective on the work that's been done there, in particular around Halton Road, without breaching any confidentiality or GDPR, if you're able to.
No, absolutely, and clearly Halton Road has become somewhat of a focus for the last number of weeks. And continues to be somewhat of a concern and an issue. The council's community safety team have been monitoring and undertaking a range of cross-directorate activities in response to Halton Road. I mean, I can run you through a few of the activities that we've been doing. I don't think they're specifically confidential in nature. Members will be aware that the council invested heavily in our renewed CCTV provision. I can assure members that the CCTV in the Halton Road area and surrounding streets is operational and is being monitored as a priority. So within the control room in Cardiff, so the operators in Cardiff, as I say, are keenly monitoring those specific cameras because of the ongoing issues. Once that footage has been reviewed, that's referred back to the community safety team, and together with other agencies, we look to identify individuals. If we are able to identify individuals, then clearly we will take an approach in speaking to the individual and/or parents, depending on the individuals concerned, and follow that through following the council's antisocial behaviour processes. We've also been doing some local works with schools. The age range of the groups that have been at Halton Road, and particularly around the King Square area, their ages range from very young children to older teenagers, and as a result of which not all of the individuals, due to the size of the group, are known necessarily to us, and working with schools to try and identify and also obviously to provide messaging through the schools, obviously in terms of the issues that are arising and the safeguarding issues that may arise for young people who are caught up in some of the ASB that's been going on. We've been obviously working with our police colleagues, working with to look at issues around identification and sharing information between agencies. We've been working with YOS. YOS staff have attended and have spoken to the core group. We've had case conferences discussing a number of the individual young people and working with YOS then to try and address some of those behaviours that we're seeing. But I think from a YOS perspective, our concern around safeguarding, because clearly a lot of these, the majority of individuals are children, and clearly we wish to ensure that there aren't individuals being exploited perhaps by older individuals and as I say, being caught up in things that are going to affect them longer term. We've raised problem-solving group meetings. We've had meetings with senior leadership of the council, including senior leadership group. We are looking to undertake engagement, continuing to take engagement events at King Square, and daily meetings, as I say, are continuing as we move forward. What we have seen and what you can tend to see is where you have activity, concentrated activity, the groups move. And I did note on social media that following some actions that have been undertaken, it was perceived that the group had moved across to Barry Island. And I think there were issues at Barry Island. And I think Councillor Collins, where we've had issues previously, Councillor Collins is obviously ward member for the area around Thompson Street. We've had similar issues where those youth annoyance issues tend to move on somewhere else once we become actively engaged. But there's a whole raft of things. There's a whole raft of measures and actions going on. Clearly, from our perspective, we're concerned around safeguarding. We're concerned about intervening and obviously putting mitigation in place so that those young people are not damaging, as they, that clearly we're aware there has been a lot of damage in the area recently. And obviously we're working with a range of agencies to try and resolve that issue. But as I say, I think it is challenging. It is challenging at the moment. I think Deb Gibbs has provided reports to this committee showing the exponential rise in antisocial behaviour across the Vale of Glamorgan. It's not just associated with Barry, but in other areas. And clearly we're looking to address those issues as best we can.
Thank you so much, Mike, for that clear and factual information. It's really useful to get out the message of what the council is doing across all teams in a sort of a joined up approach to safeguarding fundamentally some children there. Okay, and protecting the public too. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley, you still have your hand raised. Are you looking to come back in, or is that a legacy hand?
Apologies, Chair, legacy hand.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Mike. Just on that note about the area of Thompson Street, we've always had groups of kids around here because we've got Castellan Community Centre and the park right by it. So, we're used to having kids gathering around, but never more than about maybe 10 in a go. About 3, maybe 4 years ago, it started with bigger groups, and there was one day there was a group of unusual size, say about 20 or 30, all down there, underage, most of them, a lot of them drinking, a lot of them smoking pot, causing a lot of havoc for people passing by, insulting, threatening behaviour, fight starting. I had to call the police. I wasn't the only one. There were several others who had to do it. It used to be a rare occurrence around here, but in the last year or so, it's got much, much bigger. So this is something that needs to be tackled, and it does seem that the council is going the right way about it in conjunction with the police. But what my question is, has anybody from the council actually gone and talked to the traders on Halton Road who were affected by the last big lot where CEX got broken into, etc.? I know that wasn't the kids, that was somebody else, but it also happened to be on the weekend where there was a lot of antisocial behaviour and shops vandalised.
I'm minded to say I would expect the community safety team to have done some engagement work clearly with the shopkeepers. However, I can't give you an explicit yes or no, and I'd rather not.
Fair enough.
I'd rather not say one way or the other, but I will find out. And I would have expected that we would have engaged with local shops and businesses in the area. Certainly, I know the police have, because I know that they were looking for additional CCTV evidence from the shops themselves in relation to some of the ASB that was going on. But in terms of whether our community safety team have been doing that directly and independently, I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
That's fair enough, Mike. Thanks for being honest. Okay, Phil, if you want to come in.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It was just picking up what Mike said, really. It was about the contact with the traders. I know that our town centre development officer tends to have a direct contact with the traders on Holton Road, and the community safety team have kind of been using him as the message to them. There are some ideas floating around about potential sort of radio systems that some shopkeepers are using at the moment, but there's a charge to it. So I think there's a potential for some projects to emerge through the future years of the community theme of the Shared Prosperity Fund. I think for some which actually the council or the police could apply for. So that's the way it works. But we had a meeting this morning with him to discuss the connection between the safety team and the traders and trying to sort of make it a more direct contact.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. Yeah, I'm aware of the idea of the radios. I was at the Holton Road traders meeting, I think it was the 13th of February. It was around then. And they were discussing about the radios and how there was some kind of some similar plan in place a few years ago, but the costs it's all changed and costs are prohibited, and they were going to look into grants and funding, etc.
I think it's about £30 a month per shop, but it relies on having a critical mass of shops involved for it to really work. Yeah,
and some shops at the moment, with the cost of overheads now, £30 a month is a bit much for some of them to find, which is understandable with the cost of living now. However, I am hoping that can be sorted one way or another with grants or something like that. So yeah, thanks for that, Phil. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions on agenda item 7? Okay, so
just Chair, on the recommendations for this report, I've spoken to the performance team around them. If members don't have a specific comment or recommendation to go on to Cabinet, this doesn't have to be referred. Committee can simply note and endorse. Just to add that as clarification on those.
Okay. So I didn't hear any particular comments to go back to Cabinet, but I might need reminding because my sound did cut out again. I'm having terrible trouble with Teams today.
Believe so, Chair, unless members have anything now.
Okay. Okay, so are we happy to note and endorse then?
Yes,
happy
Chair.
to note and endorse, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, and that's for 1 and 2, just to check, Chair, on the recommendation 1 and 2. Lovely.
For both recommendations, yeah?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Lovely. Thanks, committee.
All right then. So the next item is the annual delivery plan monitoring report, Q3 performance 22 to 23, and progress against external regulatory recommendations and proposals for improvement. That will be Mike again, I believe.
It is. Thank you, Chair. I'm probably thinking about it. This one could have come first because clearly this report is aligned to the previous report insofar as this report is presenting to members Q3 performance for the period 22-23 for the last annual delivery plan commitments. But clearly, as I mentioned in the previous report, this will be the format clearly that those 23-24 actions that you've just considered will be reported to you on a quarterly basis, and clearly for your monitoring and consideration and scrutiny. In terms of the Q3 performance, so this is for the period of the 1st of April to the 31st of December, and highlights across the council our progress towards delivery of our planned activities and achieving our performance targets. And as you can see from the report, good progress is being made against all 4 corporate plan wellbeing objectives, which have been attributed a green performance status at Q3. Of all of the actions within the annual delivery plan, the 380 actions that we are delivering, 93% of those are on target at Q3. And of that number, only 6% of planned activities have been attributed red status. In terms of those planned activities under the remit of Homes and Safe, how does that translate? Of the 55 actions under this committee's remit, 93% of those are attributed a green status. And of the remaining 7%, which are 4 actions, they've been attributed a red status. And as you can see, they're highlighted within the body of the report. In terms of Strategic Insight Board, for those members who are unaware, looks at a range of external regulatory recommendations and proposals for improvement. Some of them may relate to this committee, as you can see from the report, but in general, positive progress is being made across the council in terms of the annual regulatory plan, with 46 ongoing actions, 35 of which have been attributed a green status. In terms of this specific committee, you can see that there are a number of actions that would fall under this service area, and one of those, as you can see, is in relation to how local government manages demand, homelessness and homelessness reviewed, an open door to positive change, for which there were 11 actions. Of all of those 11 actions, we've completed all of those actions that were highlighted by regulation. The last action was for us as a local authority to take the lead with all other local authorities in Wales in looking at best practice related to how local authorities should undertake reviews of decisions. And we've escalated that to all 22 local authorities for a best practice guide to be developed between the local authorities to ensure that we're following that best practice and doing things in a consistent way. In terms, if I can, probably in the first instance, if I can lead you to the Appendix B of the report, because those are the areas that we're not performing or we're not achieving our actions or targets as performance exceptions. You've looked at all of these previously because they've been previously, at least a couple of them have been previously identified as not moving forward as quickly as we would have liked. As you can see, the first 2 actions in Appendix B are SRS actions, and you can see an updated commentary in relation to progress on both of those actions. In terms of those that fall under housing, HSA023, maximise supply of council rented accommodation, completing schemes at Hayes Road, St Cyrus Road. As you can see, an updated anticipated completion dates on all of our sites currently under consideration or construction. A number of those sites obviously have been delayed. We've mentioned and talked about Jehu earlier this evening. But as you can see, we have, in terms of our other units, a considerable number under construction or working towards completion with estimated delivery dates. The difficulty with those clearly is that when we propose a development, there can be delays, obviously, in terms of planning. There can be delays in terms of tendering, and there may be issues, as has been mentioned today, in relation to contractor availability, and potentially reprofiling programmes where existing resources are not capable of delivering, obviously, some of the issues that we've seen in terms of inflationary pressures. Under average number of days, working days to let an empty property, as you can see, a slight deterioration in terms of target, 22 days outturned at Q3. And as you can see, we've explained there that this includes the Christmas period where we would anticipate a slowdown in performances, not only in terms of capacity and availability of staff, as staff take obviously their annual leave, usually around the festive period. But you can also see that there's also been exceptionally a number of issues with some poor quality properties that have been returned to us, which have required more extensive works. What is pleasing, however, is that the turnaround time in maintenance, so whilst the property is in repair, remains on target. In terms of additional affordable housing units, again, I won't re-rehearse what I've just said, but clearly, whilst there are delays in building work, clearly that has affected Q3 performance. And in terms of homelessness, an improvement, a positive improvement. We've reported previously performance against prevention around 42%. In the last probably year and a half. And as you can see, as we've now coming out of COVID and we're able obviously to concentrate on some of the activity, some of the additional funding, and obviously has enabled us obviously to improve our performance in Q3. So a slight improvement in relation to that action. In terms of the number of new and accessible homes, that performance measure is purely reflective of the number of new homes that we've actually had and are occupied and built. Each of our sites include a proportion of accessible homes within our sites, and clearly we won't be performing on that target until the new homes are actually built. But clearly there will be accessible homes as part of the development programme that I mentioned in one of the earlier reports. Hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour through the report. As I say, lots of really positive progress across the council, but more importantly for me, within the services that I manage and colleagues manage within the Homes and Safe Communities remit. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the run through the Q3 report. It's pleasing to see that everything's sort of going relatively really well, and just a couple of them that are, through no fault of yourselves having difficulty with. What I did want to ask about is the Court Road development with the 11 units that are there. Do we have any updates on how that's going, whether the people who were homeless, if they've moved on or and there's new people come in or anything like that, please, Mike?
Yes, people have moved on, not as many as we would like to have moved on into permanent homes. We are waiting for a couple of single person developments to come on stream. They're nearly there in Barry,
Yeah.
We obviously have the development at the former Castle Pub.
Yes.
And we will have the development also at Dockview Road. Due to come on stream shortly. So probably not as many move-ons as we would like. We have had a few issues with people wishing that they could remain there permanently because they find the accommodation, as we know, and for those members who have seen the accommodation themselves would prefer to stay there than perhaps move on to some of our other one-bedroomed accommodation elsewhere. I think that's a testament to the amount of effort and energy that went into developing what is an exemplar transitional accommodation site, Councillor Perks. But yeah, it's going really well. Any concerns and issues that we had in relation to perhaps some neighbourliness, let's put it that, issues have not come to fruition. The site is well managed, and the residents are looking after the homes as we would wish. And all in all, a really positive scheme.
Thank you, Mike. That's really good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Perks, I've just got a comment to make. I actually know somebody who is in one of those buildings on Court Road. He's been there about a year now, and he absolutely loves it. It is he loves the accommodation. He loves everything about it. However, he does want to go somewhere more permanent, and he emailed me the other day to say he might well be moving soon. So he's looking forward to that. He'd be sad to leave the place, he says.
Yeah,
because it is lovely and it's great, but he would like something more permanent, like everybody does. Okay.
Oh,
that's I give you a bit of feedback.
Oh no,
from one of the
that's really
residents.
good. That's really good feedback from the residents as well. I'm hoping Mike will let me move in at some stage in one of them when I retire.
Okay, Councillor Hennessy, you're next. Councillor Hennessy, you're muted.
Technology. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, have we started the caravan licensing review?
Not an area that falls under my responsibility, Councillor Hennessy, and I don't believe we have an officer from SRS, unfortunately, at the meeting this evening. I will, however, ask Helen Picton, our head of service, SRS responsible for caravan licensing and mobile home licensing. If there are specific questions, please let me know, and I'll follow those up directly with Helen.
Okay, and the second point, it says in the paperwork that the construction has started on Colcott Clinic. I can confirm that hasn't. It's been demolished. No construction has started yet.
I suppose demolition and the start of the development we see as obviously the clearance of the site. So it's in the hands of the contractor.
Okay.
As far as that contractor commencing on site, it's imminent. But as I say, is now in the hands of our contractor. Again, I can find a more specific date, but it is imminent. I know it's imminent, Councillor Hennessy.
I think Belle will probably like to know a little, probably more than me, as it's her ward.
No problem. As I say, I can update with, and I'm sure we'll bring a future report to committee in terms of our development proposals, not only where we're on site, but our ambitions going forward as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Lovelock Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. Just to clarify, I just assumed that the clearing of the site was part of the construction process. So yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, it's just in relation to Appendix B and the performance indicator on page 2. And I don't know if you're able to, but can you clarify if there's a specific reason why it tends to take longer as referenced for viewings and sign-ups for older people? Is it, without stereotyping, is it to do with age and needs, or is there an underlying issue that perhaps as the older people's champion I could sort of support on sort of addressing that? Feedback to the various forums, in particular the Vale 50+ forum around that issue. Thank you.
Yeah, it relates to the void process itself, Councillor Lovelock Edwards. So where we're given notice of a void, and where we have a long lead-in time, it's much easier to liaise and to advertise the property and to liaise with the prospective new tenant well in advance of a move. On occasions, clearly, properties become available for a whole host of reasons, but where that notice period is not given for various obvious reasons, then an expectation when we look to relet the property that properties are occupied immediately. What we tend to find with older persons accommodation there, that the family may wish to decorate the property prior to moving in. They may have issues in relation to clearing the old property and removing items, and families removing items on behalf of more elderly and frail relatives. I think it's just something that we accept as something that we accept as something that is an issue because of the speed of turnaround that we're looking at. 20 working days, 3 weeks from effectively viewing, accepting the property, to actually then moving in is a fairly quick process compared to where we were a number of years ago, where we were talking possibly 3 months. A number of years ago until we got to grips with the issue. And I think it's more to do with that. It's the circumstances of the void, the nature and reason for somebody moving in is also a factor, because sometimes the property may require some level of adaptation. So it may require some additional aids in the form of and there may be some delay as a result of some of those essential aids being provided at the very outset. We don't want to, for our older persons or anyone, to incur unnecessary cost by doing so, and hence we probably give a little bit more latitude to certain groups at certain, where there's certain vulnerabilities to ensure that doesn't happen.
Thank you, Mike. That's useful. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike. And Mike, I just wanted to say to you and your team, your performance regarding the ADP percentage, I think, considering the challenges we've had the last few months, is really good. And thank you for making the monitoring reports so easy to understand, where with the RAG system, they're almost councillor proof, and it does make it a lot easier for us to understand all the information that you're given. If you can pass that on to your team, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I would love to take all of the credit for writing the reports, but I will pass that on to Tom Bowring and Tom Bowring's team, who do a sterling job, I think, in terms of putting all that preparation in. Thank you very much.
Apologies. Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any other questions? Okay, there are 4 recommendations for this. 3 recommendations for this, I should say. Members consider performance results and progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan, 2022 to 23 commitments, as aligned in our corporate plan wellbeing objectives within the remit of the committee. Are we happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. The second is that members consider the remedial actions to be taken to address areas of underperformance and to tackle the key challenges identified within the remit of the committee, with their views and recommendations referred thereafter to Cabinet for their consideration and approval. Is everybody happy with that one?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. And the third sorry, the third recommendation is that members review the progress made to date in addressing the recommendations and improvement proposals made by our external regulators, and upon review to recommend to the Governance and Audit Committee and thereafter to Cabinet the removal of completed actions from the Insight Tracker as relevant to the remit of the Scrutiny Committee. Are Council happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Committee, I should say. Our committee happy with that? Got the word council on the brain today. Okay. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Agenda item 9 is any other business. I have none. I will let you know now that the date of the next meeting is the 19th of April. Once again, I just want to say it is International Women's Day, I should say. Back in 1997, I entered a poetry competition ran by the Vale of Glamorgan Council, and I won it. I was 15 years old, and the poem I wrote was, we had a list of topics. The topic I chose was an ancient Chinese proverb that says, women hold up the other half of the sky. I'll leave you guys with that thought. Enjoy your evening. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Chair.